All right, so was hoping that Newt and I would have something more to discuss or kind of share with the epics and issues for trial and some of the free email paths, email nurtures that we could do, that we could ideate on. Right now, she's been, like she said, heads down in pricing updates. So that's completely been like pushed to the side, but will become a focus again once she does some of the really critical things for the pricing email. But I kind of just wanted to set a regular cadence of meeting together to talk about overlapping email nurture programs that really, I would say, Newt's kind of trying to architect the entire, like, let's make sure we know exactly how we're messaging to each audience in our database. And that's something that we need to team with marketing operations on, making sure we actually have them clearly defined. So when we want to do an email, we have that already built in. We can immediately go target instead of saying, hey, we want to do this. We have to MVC it because we don't have it set up. Let's go figure out a way to do it ad hoc. And then that actually takes a lot of time. So kind of just wanted to level set that a lot of that work needs to be done. And I think the big switch over of users to Marketo is going to help enable us to actually be more agile in trying new processes or new programs with different segments within our database, both users, prospects, partners, community, customers, like all of those we need to outline. So I've been working with Nout on overarching, like, let's get the audiences figured out and then work with the teams that really dig into each of those audiences. And for growth, I think that having a clear idea of where that overlap is and what kind of you're chartered with would be helpful. And then some immediate MVCs I do want to touch on are trial and demo, which Todd brought up in the Agility Project. So I guess first question is, in your view of what growth is going to be focused on, where would you see overlap, or what are some of your key audiences that you're expecting to target?
The biggest one that comes to mind is just the free.com users that keep coming up in terms of one of the things we've been asked to do is help activate them to, I think the goal is really activating them to paid, and maybe there's an intermediary step where we want to activate them to trial if they were like free for like years and maybe didn't express a lot of intent. We need to like reactivate them first before we can ask them for money.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That's probably the biggest bucket because I believe they're historically in MailChimp. So it's like, we want to be a good partner and ideally be like, hey, like, let's build audiences in Marketo together that we both care about. And then I would love a world where, similar to how we have the homepage hero request, it's like, if we have an email request that we can just say, here's kind of the goal we're thinking about and the audience and a rough sense of the content, and then kind of running that by you so that because I think there's such a risk of over emailing that I kind of feel like it still lives with campaigns. Like, even if we're doing things, I think it still probably should always be kind of going through a DRI that I think makes more sense to be you, because I think your team is sending a lot more emails than we are historically. Is that true? I don't actually know.
It definitely will be. So
Okay.
Here, this historical context is that we have a lot of records in our database. Can we email them is a huge question. Like, did they actually opt in? We have a new person that's started in compliance, and you're well aware of this from the Agility Project, the boring Agility Project, but they're taking a keen eye to how we're instrumenting our GDPR, CASL, like all of our email opt-in requirements. And the challenge has been for the records that exist. Like, we'll have a point in time where we say, we are confident that everything moving forward, like, they are opt-in practice ready. Mm-hmm. For the ones that are existing, can we email them? Number two is, do we have the data to actually target them in a strategic way? A lot of records are missing their job title. We need to do kind of a cleanup on lead lifecycle. What stage are they in terms of raw inquiry, MQL, SAL, qualified, qualifying, nurture, unqualified. Like, we need to do a cleanup, and that's something that we need to work with marketing ops on. But there's a bunch of dependencies to that too.
Yep, that makes sense.
So kind of our ideal state is, and I'm kind of looking to Nout as that, map out all of the audiences. Let's track to that with marketing operations. And that way, when you have an idea of a campaign that you say, hey, we really think that targeting this specific audience in this way is going to help us increase SAOs, for example, or inquiry to MQL, like you define that conversion rate that we're trying to change. And we'll be able to partner with you to say, okay, here's what we can do. Let's move forward. And hopefully we already have those audiences defined. So it's not, right now it's very ad hoc, and a request will come through and it'll be well, let's research if we have that group and that we can actually email them. So that's the ideal state, but the couple steps to get there is define the strategy of targeting, socialize it with all the relevant teams, agree to it, then it will need to be instrumented by marketing operations. And I do like they have so much on their plate right now that I don't want to give any sort of timeline on when that ideal state will come, because we would need to negotiate that with them against other priorities.
So I think the only other big bucket, I mean, there's definitely a lot here, but so the .com users is a big bucket. I think another big bucket is we have a lot of people who come in as like raw email inquiries. And I think our, inbound conversion is going to be a little bit lower. Like the buying intent's just not always there. So I think there's lots of good reasons they don't convert to MQL. I think one of the things I'd love to move us towards is more nurture, so that we're continuing to educate. And I don't feel like I don't know if I actually am knowledgeable enough here, but I don't feel like I've seen like really clear nurture tracks for inbounds where they get 10 touches, but I wouldn't be shocked if it takes 7 to 10 touches to actually MQL. So just being able to do drips, like basic drips for or Path Factory. I actually don't have a strong preference. It's just that I think it's about more touches. Like even being able to know how many touches we are on average getting before someone MQLs too, so we can kind of push them down a lookalike path would be really powerful.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something that Dunk has been talking about, and that's something that's of interest to us. And I think we're building the infrastructure to be able to say that a bit better. When it comes to Path Factory versus email, I still want to understand fully what Dunk is meaning by using Path Factory more in place of email, because I think of email as the channel that brings you back to the Path Factory experience. So they should be hand in hand, and it should elevate the user experience by revealing related content that's of interest and helping them to binge on the content. When it comes to, where was my other thought? Oh, where'd it go? When it comes to having nurture paths, we are moving that direction. I would say the plan was and is currently that the use case campaigns are essentially a way to rally our teams together to build those umbrella use case based nurture programs. And we're doing it a bit slower. I'm going to actually talk to Dunk about MVCing. Let's just get a focus on the nurture, but a lot of them don't have content yet that really strictly aligns to use case. So let's start to plan out when we'll have those in place. There's nurture that you can do by source. So trial, demo, some of those that aren't really aligned to a product interest. But then the most natural, I think, way to build out topic-based nurtures, where someone's raising their hand and showing interest in CI, for example, or DevSecOps, you can kind of structure the website to say, these are the key focuses of each of these pages. Let's drive the right content for them, which is what the Strength in Our Inbound core seems to be focusing on, in addition to driving more trials. When they fill out those forms, we've already aligned them to the use cases so that they fill out that form. They're now in that nurture, and they receive related content. But then there's some other things we want to talk about with Preference Center and being able to self-select into other topics that are of interest. And then working our team with marketing operations to build that automation, the logic, and the movement from nurture to nurture based on what they're interested in, and the right content at the right time. So based on awareness, consideration, decision purchase, we've already been trying to align that way and make sure that we align with product marketing and the website, and just be all speaking the same language. But that was a brain dump. That's what we were moving towards, but it is taking a lot of time.
It's great. I mean, so just to be clear, when I ask for these things, these are definitely not criticisms. I know there's so much. So yeah. I just want to make sure what's most important to us so that we can stay aligned.
Yeah, no, I don't see it as criticism. I think that it's what hopefully we all want, but I don't think it's easy to give a great outline of here's what we have, here's where we want to get, and here's the actual timeline to get there. And that's something that working with you all it can help us, I think, drive what are the top priorities, and working with product marketing too, like strategic marketing on really every team should be in the loop on what do we see as the biggest opportunities? What should we fight off next?
One question I have is I'm a little nervous that, there's a lot I don't know, so this might not be right, but I'm nervous that we seem to have these very big scope, like cleanup projects that we kind of have to do. And it scares me because I want to be able to kind of MVC, like I don't want to invest a ton if like a campaign turns out to not even really, you know, drive value, but we do have, from a volume perspective, just so many inbound contacts. So like every day that goes by that we don't nurture them, I do feel like, you know, that growing sense of urgency. So I just want to express that. I understand that there's a lot on the backlog. How do you think about if there's any scope down opportunity here?
Can I speak to that, Jackie? So totally get you, 100%. It is really hard to look at the scope of everything we need to accomplish without getting completely overwhelmed. I've worked on very similar projects multiple times before, and the key is to take these very large projects and just break them into like MVC chunks, like milestone sized chunks. But at the end, everything rolls up to the strategy that we've all agreed on. I want to get away from MVCing in a way without like some sort of overall strategy in place, because that kind of is what got us in this mess to begin with. And so let's not think about it as like, I was told this, as like getting away from the MVC and, you know, stepping away from our culture, not necessarily doing that, but we're taking a strategy and turning that into MVC chunks. Because we might try something and it may not work, and that really puts us in a place to quickly be able to like iterate and try something else. But when it comes to the database, like that is just something that has to happen. The work we just need to do it. It's a little overdue, but if we don't do it now, it's never gonna get fixed, and we're just gonna pile up more problems on top of, you know, I use the house analogy, like, you know, your foundation is cracking, and you really need to fix your foundation before you can, you know, build a second level on top of your house, that sort of thing. And so I think like when we're going to have a strategic plan, I think we're going to get buy-in, hopefully from all the teams that, you know, and all the stakeholders. And then we're going to go to the people that actually do the work, like potentially, I mean, us, marketing ops, if sales ops is involved, and say, what can we do in like what can we accomplish in milestones? And something as simple as a field or two fields in the database can be very helpful. Like, for example, just giving you an example here, job title is really important for us to be able to market properly and target properly. And something as simple as fixing that field and assigning it values that are clean, that can really help us go an extra mile when it comes to our targeting. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But these are projects that are like if you're looking at the entire database project, that is potentially a 12-month project. But every single slice within it, we're going to be able to do quickly, like depending on how you define that.
So I'll just share one point of pressure I'm getting, just so you know, because I probably, every meeting we have, I'll ask this question and you'll be like, gosh, Danielle, like we have so many other things to do. I think there's a lot of pressure because I think you're all aware, GitLab.com, the free service, we spend a whole lot of money to host it. And it turns out that cost is a marketing expense, which we didn't think about until pretty recently. It's about, I think it's $3 or $4 million a year that we didn't really realize we were carrying as part of our CAC. And so we did get permission a couple months ago, and this like is new for the company, permission to email these users. I think we're going to continue to get pressure, and like all the way from Sid, and I don't mind getting pressure from Sid, but I like to try to answer his questions of just like, hey, why aren't we emailing these people yet? Right now I have good answers because it's like, well, they were in MailChimp and we're not sure we have permission to email them, and we need to sort that out. But definitely there's, you know, some amount of pressure around, well, what's just the timeline to being able to leverage that asset so we can try to make, basically try to turn the free users into a bit more of a channel where we can say, hey, there's some ROI here.
Absolutely.
So when I bring this up, it's definitely not me harping on it for like any personal reason other than like there's definitely pressure in the company around it. So I just want to, I guess, raise that one as something that we probably don't have 12 months, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think of that actually as something separate. So
Okay.
I'm not thinking of the overall database, like demand gen, engine, database, lifecycle. Like that's part of it, but that's like, it's not going to take 12 months to do that. I think of the free.com users as it's kind of going to be two concurrent paths. One is the actual messaging, like what do we want to say? Who do we want to say it to? When are we saying it? And the second part is the data and the infrastructure to do the first path. And they can happen, the planning for both can happen at the same time. But then we're going to have some dependencies, like in order to actually execute some automation, automated emails to users, we're going to need the database to be able to do that. So I think we can, if we want to say that is our priority, which I recommend doing that, because otherwise it's like you just have juggling too many priorities. If we say within this project that is a priority, then I can start once this pricing thing is done, because I really do need all my brain cells for that. I can start like creating the epics and the issues, like Jackie was saying, and thinking through, like, I want to understand what data is available, like what do we actually capture, because from what I understand, it's not a whole lot. So our hands might be tied on what we can actually say to whom. And so if we can understand what data is available, I think Jackie mentioned that as well. Like what user data do we actually have? What are the milestones for usage? So I want to understand, like, create an account, log in for the first time, etc., and maybe some data around how long it takes, like how long between milestones, like milestone velocity. I don't know if that's a thing. And then eventually I want to try and get to the 80-20, like 80% automation, 20% ad hoc, or it really should be like 90-10, but I'm being generous. Where we just have all these automated drips or multi-email campaigns, whatever you want to call them. I don't want to call it a nurture because that's something somewhat different. That it really puts us on the same level as other SaaS companies that have a free offering. This is just something that's expected. But we just need to, there's just, like you said, Danielle, there's a lot I don't know. And it's hard to plan when you just don't have all the information. So whoever is in charge of that, like, if we all get together and put our heads together, like, we can come up with a really good plan, and then we can come up with how to execute. I know that the migration from MailChimp to Marketo is a big part of that. And we're finding out lots of really unfortunate / interesting things about who are allowed to email, who are not allowed to email, et cetera, as you can imagine.
Yeah, so just to put we don't have to, I don't want to rat hole in this, but there are some people in product growth who are basically, they're 2 PMs who it is their job to make this conversion of the trial successful.
Is it Jensen and Sam?
Yeah, Jensen and Sam. And I think one thing we should probably be doing is building a list of, like, our wish list of, hey, I wish you had set it up this way, these fields, these opt-ins, whatever brokenness we find, because they are super invested in this also, and we're starting to talk to them a lot. So I know that even though they're not on this call, we'll always be representing for them, because I think that part of this is you might not be, from a resources perspective, you might not be alone in that. Like, we might be able to get some of that team to be helping here with fixing some of those things for you. So just want to make sure that it sounds like you're already talking to them, but I think that we should, as much as possible, just tell them, like, here's why there were consequences to some of the choices that we made in the past, so that we can stop making those choices.
That's kind of what we're dealing with right now, is the consequences of years of choices that were made because that's what was needed at the time.
Or because people didn't understand, right, the implications.
No. And so, like, as we scale, we need to put into place, like, basically enterprise level marketing infrastructure.
I'm 1,000% with you on that.
Cool. Did you have something? I saw you going off mute.
Yeah, so I was just going to point out we have 3 minutes left, and we haven't talked about the MVC for trial and demo. So if we can just knock that out in 3 minutes, I think it's pretty straightforward. We need a message, we need an action, and we just need to get that into an email, right?
Yeah, but so chiming in, a couple things. We have future planning, future architecture, future like what we should be doing with growth. I see that as a separate thing than when we say MVC. Let's MVC figure out an audience that we can target and go after it. And the free trial is one. We do have an existing free trial. So I think it's a revision of that. Becky, I think you have an epic for that. So let's build off of that epic and put in what are the steps that we need to do to launch this by the end of June for the agility project, not end of July, not end of quarter, right? Is that what timeline we're dealing with?
Isn't end of June, end of quarter?
No.
No, end of July is.
I was
Our
getting
quarter, yeah.
like, so does it need to be by end of agility project or end of July? Because that will change the timeline.
I would like to have it done by the end of the agility project, just so we can include it in that strengthen our core. But if it's not feasible with the other workload, let's just say it'll be done by the end of the quarter, and we can call it yellow in the project. Yeah,
let's maybe pick off the free trial as the number one. Would you agree that that's more important than the demo nurture? Yeah. I would argue that it is. So, and we already have some research done on what that structure looks like. I know we have it documented in our handbook, but there's also some notes already taken on how we can improve that process. So I would want maybe Nout can help with the structure of the epic, and then let's work with, is it Becky or is it this whole team on the kind of the planning or the copy or updates there?
Let's coordinate through Becky, just so we have a DRI on our side, but we're here to support you, Becky.
Okay. All right, so next steps here, once the pricing update, which is really number one and it can't change, it for Nout is to work through the epic, the related issues of what we need to do to get there. It's kind of like what we're doing with the pricing update is like, what are all the dependencies? What are all the things that as we dig in more, there are more dependencies that we didn't even realize, and start to, I think we can make those updates by end of January or end of June, because the emails are technically there. It's a refresh on the copy, but we might want to also think about not just the copy, but the message itself and what we're offering, because I don't know that it's really focusing on the sticky features or what will make them more likely to convert or use it more frequently. So let's take that as the next step, is to open a discussion on that. Sound good? Any other thoughts, Nout, or anyone?
No.
Just to keep us out, but yes, that epic is set up that way, where it was like we went through everything, and then the decision was basically we need to just update the content for this because the whole database of people is a bigger mess. The other thing that I want to make sure, and this might have been discussed, is that I want to get the forms and the back end fixed now so that new people that are coming in, we can email to. So that we can say there's an entire database, we will deal with that. There's a lot of dependencies, but the people that are coming in now, we know that everything is set up the right way for them. So I think that that's the most important thing for us to like begin with, so that every day doesn't go by with more people going into this black hole of things that are not set up properly.
Okay, and do we have it documented, the steps for the trial? If not, and maybe that's something that product will provide.
Becky, didn't you do that already? I feel like I saw it somewhere.
I have it set up kind of where it is, but I think that there's way more things. We might need to get product growth involved, because there's a lot of places that like we learned in that call a few days ago where that we just didn't even think of because the way it was set up or sent or whatever. So we put that as an action item.
Yeah, action item to dig into that, and maybe loop product growth into this project overall. They'll have a lot of insights. They know the customer base, I think, better than anyone.
Yep.
Great. Well, I know we're 1 minute over, so any parting thoughts? Or we have the Slack group. I think everyone should be on it. If not, let's add them, and I will upload this unfiltered for everyone to reference.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Shel.